want to wish our audience a happy World Hijab Day. Yes, that is today. And I'm sure most of you are paying your respects, of course. But all right, let's be honest, right? I know you guys weren't, but let's talk about the Middle East for today, because honestly, there's so much going on. There's so much to unpack, and we're getting closer and closer to war, unfortunately, with Iran. And it's all because of the Biden regime. And ultimately, there's just so many angles to come at this story regarding Iran getting ready to attack. I mean, that's really what it looks like at this point. It looks like we might potentially be at war soon. Now, the United States says that intel is telling them that Iran's a little nervous about going to war with the United States, but it doesn't look like that. Ultimately, John Kirby spoke about the issue earlier this week, and we'd like to play a clip from him.
Things. First of all, as we've said many times, we don't seek a war with Iran. We're not looking for a broader conflict. We're not looking for a war with Iran. That's number one. Number two, we have obligations in the region, including those to our troops and our facilities. And now, as Karine reminded everybody, those attacks have taken the lives of 3 of them. We will do what we need to do to make sure that those responsible are held properly accountable.
Okay, so he's referring to the 3 Marines who were killed. We learned that over the weekend, sadly. And now they're preparing to respond, but Iran's really stepping things up. And according to reports, Iran is beginning to build 4 more nuclear plants. So it doesn't seem like things are calming down anytime soon. Now, I wanted to bring somebody in who knows all about this, and she knows all about the Middle East, and she's who I go to when I've got my questions. So let's bring in independent journalist Annie Cyrus. Annie, thank you for being here. Like I mentioned, you're my go-to source. I love everything that you're doing, and all of your work is available at liveuptofreedom.com. So I wanted to get your perspective, because I know a lot of Americans are fearful right now as to what's going on right now in Iran and what's going on here in the U.S. Do you think we're inching closer and closer to war with Iran?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Brianna. And quick answer, no. And because you phrased it as, are we getting closer to a war with Iran? That's a no. Biden regime is not going to go, as Kirby said. They're not looking for war with Iran. They're looking for alliance and friendship with Iran. Now, if you would reverse the question as to, is Iran getting closer to starting a war with America, the answer is absolutely. As soon as they take care of Israel, they're coming for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, we know the Biden regime has negotiated in the past with this regime, and ultimately it really hasn't led to anything positive for us. Are you worried about the reports about the 4 nuclear power plants that are being built in Iran? And do we have any idea of how many are actually currently functioning in Iran?
Well, am I concerned? Definitely. Now, mind you, we should go back a little, because the original negotiations started under Hussein Obama's administration. That's where he started the whole Iran nuclear deal. The negotiations went nowhere. Congress wasn't okay with it, so he used his personal pen to sign an executive order, get the deal going, make promises. But if you go and read the original Iran nuclear deal, you'll see that we got nothing in return, nothing, and we gave them a lot. Fast forward to October of 2021, when Biden regime decided to go back and start negotiation again, because President Trump walked away from the deal and cut it all off, put sanctions back. So we started indirect negotiations. What does that mean? Was the 5+1 countries decided that 5 of them, America out, will sit in a room with representatives from Iran. They do the negotiation, then they come into the hallway and pass the message. Then American representatives will say, yay, no, maybe, let me think about it. Here's a counter offer. They would go back into the room and talk to Iranian people. Why is this important? Is because I want your audience to understand how much Biden regime has shattered the image of United States of America when it comes to negotiations or Middle East. This is right there is the sort of why they never took us serious, regardless of how much we get on cameras. And by us, I don't mean me and you, the Biden regime members, and make threats. They're never being taken serious, because we went as far as sitting in hallways waiting for their orders. And every single demand, Brianna, was met until the very last one, which was remove IRGC, which is Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, remove IRGC from the terrorist list. That's when Biden regime couldn't, not that they didn't want to, but they couldn't remove that. That's when the negotiation ended. No, we don't want the deal. We're going home. But in the meantime, we ended up lifting all sanctions, all of them. We ended up unfreezing close to $81 billion of assets in different countries for them. And we ended up giving them cash money.
Yeah.
In return, we have them attacking our bases, military bases all across the Middle East. We have them funding Hamas to attack Israel and Jewish people. We have them funding and training Hezbollah to attack Israel and Jewish people. And we have allowed their deal with cartel members at the border to go forward to where IRGC hands cartel weapons. In return, cartel members get their soldiers through our borders into the country.
Yeah, I think most Americans.
Sorry, I forgot about the nuclear. I don't think the 4 is the last. I do believe they've been since Obama time. They've been actively building, working. The watchdogs of nuclear negotiation have declared they're up to 81%. The uranium level is 81%. They are weeks away from having the actual weapon. Literally weeks away.
That's horrifying. That really is. And I know most Americans are fearful of what might come next. Ultimately, Annie, do you think that we might actually witness an attack here on the mainland, potentially?
I would say that all depends on what happens with the convoy at the border right now. Let me tell you why. They are hoping, Biden regime is hoping, the convoy at the border in Texas will turn into some sort of a standoff. It's going to turn into another setup like J6. It's going to turn into a possible tiny civil war situation where they can create enough chaos for what they need to do. And what I'm referring to is the election coming up in November. If that fails, if they don't achieve their goal, if our guys are smart enough not to walk into the trap, then yes, the next plan is to authorize all the Islamic terror attacks across America to, again, create the chaos that's needed. Remember, all of these go to one point, and that is for the Biden regime, which is the deep state, which is the American-hating members, which is the cabal and the globalists, to conquer America. So anything that could help them achieve that goal, they will not say no to.
That's horrifying. It really is. And ultimately, I mean, we're in an election year, so I know a lot of people believe that this might come to an end if President Trump gets elected. Annie, are you hopeful that if we have an administration change, that tensions might kind of relax a little bit, or do you think this will carry over to the next administration?
Well, okay, I'm going to take a little longer to explain this one. In perfect world of us Americans, if President Trump would win, take office, pick an administration that was his, because we need to always keep in mind when President Trump was in the White House, he was isolated within his own administration. He didn't have too many allies inside White House. So that's why I say if he picks an administration that are his allies, the right people, then yes, President Trump does have what it takes to stop Iran's chaos in the Middle East, definitely. Would that mean we might possibly go to war in the Middle East? Yes, even though I am not pro-war, but sometimes war is needed for safety of a nation or a region. But that is far from what we could possibly ask for. With Biden regime in power, with deep state running the show, it's either they won't let President Trump win. Two possible scenarios. A lot of people are thinking they're going to try to steal election again. I don't think that's the plan. Remember, since February of 2021, IRGC has put out a bounty on President Trump for the revenge of Qasem Soleimani. I think they will either set up IRGC and assassinate President Trump, then blame IRGC for it, or they will cooperate with IRGC to take out President Trump. The other possibility is they will let President Trump win. And when he takes office, their own people will start the civil war inside America, which then won't give President Trump any chance to fix anything outside of America, because then he has to focus on the civil war going on inside the country. Now, I know some of your audience who are not familiar with me, they might think I am definitely out there. But when I put these together is because every morning I'm listening to IRGC and Iran's news. Then I'm switching over to Taliban and Afghanistan news. Then I'm switching over to Pakistan because I do speak their languages. I monitor their news nonstop. And then I come over and compare notes with our news and what the FBI and CIA and Homeland Security are saying. When I compare notes, these are the only outcomes we could possibly face comes November of 2024.
I like how you just detailed that for our audience too, because most of the time when people hear this, they might think that that might be a little outside of the box, but it really isn't. We know that different countries, like you detailed, Iran and Pakistan, and they do service their citizens with different types of news coverage, and it is controlled. And so it's interesting to learn that from a different angle as well. You forwarded me a story. I wanted to bring our audience attention to it. It was regarding one Iranian and 2 Canadian nationals being indicted here by the Department of Justice for a murder for hire scheme. Let's see. It goes on to saying that according to the document, from December 2020 through March of 2021, these group of individuals were conspiring with each other in a plot to murder of 2 residents in Maryland. Ultimately, they were communicating through an encrypted messaging app, it looks like, and they were looking to recruit individuals who would travel to the United States to carry out the killings. Annie, this is horrifying, but it's not a rare occasion that something like this does take place. What are you learning about this story, and why is this so important for Americans to pay attention to this? Because it's not really a rare situation, is it?
It is not, and that was the main reason I wanted us to go over this, because a lot of times on my own show, when I talk about what's happening with Iran or what's happening with the regime in Iran or Iranian people, my audience tend to be like, hey, listen, Annie, we appreciate what you're doing, but we want to hear about American politics. And then I tell them what happens in Iran absolutely directly affects what happens to us here. Now, myself being an Iranian American, I'm on IRGC's hit list. I literally had calls directly from FBI to let me know which list, on what date they have found my information of a hit list of IRGC. Now, mind you, I've never been offered help from FBI, just so you know. Not that I would accept it, but I just want to put it out there. They do call me to tell me, hey, Ms. Cyrus, we just found your name or your location or your hacked laptop or your hair salon address on the hit list of IRGC. Watch your back. They have started coming after Iranian Americans first, those of us who are pushing back or reporting or translating or exposing their agendas. But then when the IRGC came out with a bounty on President Trump's head for killing Qasem Soleimani, few weeks after that, they came out and said, we're going to kill as many Americans as required until blood drips off our sleeves in revenge. That is when a lot of Iranians who work for IRGC or on their payroll inside America and inside Canada started thinking to cash in. For any Iranian American or pro-Trump American they kill, they will receive a reward. So you see how it's related as to whatever happens with Iran and IRGC could affect our safety right here in America. Now, mind you, we have, I believe, more than 1.2 million Iranian Americans just in California. You do the math of how many of them could possibly any day decide they want to be rewarded for killing me, killing you, killing someone else who's pro-Trump, killing someone else who's pro-America, killing someone else who's reporting on Iran's nuclear deal or nuclear weapon or nuclear facility. When you put those numbers together, Americans should be very aware. Now, I'm not saying get out there and hate on Iranians. That's not what I'm saying. I'm an Iranian myself. You don't have a way of knowing. Unfortunately, I do, but you don't. I'm not saying go up against Iranians or Iranian Americans. I'm just saying pay attention. Just because you have a Middle Eastern neighbor who goes to the bar and have a beer with you, that doesn't mean in any shape or form they're your friend, they're your ally, or they love America as much as you do. On this very report, one of the Canadians who agreed to come to America to carry out the pullout was a Canadian, supposedly part of the motorcycle club somewhere. I mean, that's as American we would think, right? Somebody riding a Harley, wearing the jacket. They agreed to the money. So unfortunately, the level of watch your back is pretty high. Stop easily handing out trust. Pay attention to your surrounding. Listen to the words that comes out of someone's mouth. Somebody tells you, I can always tell you, I love America, but my actions matches it. I know what's happening with America. Or at least, even though I have an accent, but I have tried to learn the language, the culture, all of this. And by the way, this was dated in 2020, right? Our own government never talked about this. You never heard about this. I did, because we researched all the Iranian Americans who are on the hit list of IRGC, but our government isn't out there to watch our back or protect us. That's the bottom line. Sorry to say it, but we're on our own.
We tell people that all the time, honestly, Annie. This administration has it pretty much well known these days that we are on our own, and you have to be able to defend yourself by any means necessary. And it's all disturbing. Annie, people are probably wondering, how do you end up on these lists, right? Like, why all of a sudden are people, like you said, that you ended up on this list? How does an individual get flagged and put on this list? Because, I mean, is it just people who are pro-America, pro-Trump, or is there something else about it?
So the number, let's say we're going to break this list into 3 tiers. Okay. The first tier are Iranian dissidents who are publicly either using their social media platform, or someone like me with a daily broadcast, someone can go on other people's show. It's the Iranian dissidents who are reporting what is happening inside Iran to Iranian people, especially Iranian Christians, under the regime of Iran. We are the very first names to make it to the hit list, because they need to silence us. Until probably 10 years ago, nobody heard about what happens in Iran. They knew their mullahs, they knew they're barbaric because of the hostage crisis of 1979, but nobody knew the extent of what they're capable of. Social media came along. Some of us with capability of reading their language and English started translating information. So it got to where they're losing control of the narrative. So they started putting us on the list. The second tier are people like yourself, Brannon House, Jamie Glazov, Robert Spencer, American, who are also anti-Iranian regime, pro-American constitution. These two have to go hand to hand. If you are pro-American constitution, but you are opposing the regime of Iran, especially their treatment of U.S. military bases or American people or threats, then you make it to that list. Now, depending on how big your reach is, if you're reaching millions of people, for example, Pamela Geller received a bounty. They put a fatwa on her that if anyone would capture her and film the whole process or take pictures, capture her, rape her, and then chop her into pieces, will receive money, because she was reaching millions of people with her daily report on Islamic terrorist attacks across the world. She was gaining momentum. Now, thank God she is safe as of today, but she had to make a lot of changes in her life to stay safe. And then there's the last tier, which are, for example, pro-Trump Americans, specifically pro-Trump, who defended Trump on his actions of taking out Qasem Soleimani, Abu Bakr, or any of the heads of the Islamic jihadists in the Middle East. Then you make it to that list. Now, those aren't based on name. It's more of find them, kill them, give us the information, we give you the reward. So the third tier doesn't really have names. It has a generic category of people. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, Annie, it's really just alarming, honestly, and especially when you map it out like that, the 3 tiers to this list. I mean, that's just horrifying in itself, but it doesn't help that our administration right now is allowing people to enter our country, and they're just kind of, there's a lot of people, terrorists, cartel members, who are going under the radar, and we keep hearing more and more stories about it, I wanted to bring our audience's attention to a story that we covered earlier this week. It was broken by the Daily Caller. It was an exclusive that they did. And ultimately, it was in regards to a Somalian terrorist who was able to make his way into the country and was living here for almost a year. Ultimately, he was caught up just recently with ICE because they realized who he was, and he was actually living in Minnesota. Earlier today, I spoke about it, and although they kind of were very vague with their response regarding the story, they credited ICE for the fast response, which really isn't a fast response at all. Ultimately, this guy was living in our country for almost a year. I reached out to DHS because I wanted some information, because ultimately it's DHS that failed us, not ICE. And DHS, after finding out I was an independent journalist, would not get back to me. But Annie, I mean, this is horrifying in itself, because ultimately we're seeing terrorists making their way into the interior of our country, and for almost a year just going undetected pretty much. What do you make of this story as a whole, and who are you blaming? Who's the agency that failed us, really? Because it could DHS, Border Patrol. I mean, who do we blame?
Well, as far as this terrorist going, I don't believe we don't know. I should say I don't believe FBI and DHS and ICE and the rest of the organizations, government organizations, I don't think they don't know about these terrorists in our country. I think they don't care. Or some of them have been paid to look the other way. I can back this claim up. When we did the disastrous and embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan and handed it over to Taliban after 20 years, we loaded planes with more 60,000+ Afghans and brought them right into America, placed them in our military bases across the country, and pretty much a few months later opened the gate and said, you know what, just welcome to America. We'll let them out. To this day, we have no record of their name, their age, their nationality. We don't know if they were really from Afghanistan. I've seen pictures back then when I pointed out a few Palestinians, I pointed out a few Indians, I pointed out a few Iranians, and I know for most of you, almost we all look alike, but we can tell each other, apart. But it's a tricky thing. And then we just let them out, right? And most of them, about 80%, I believe, were military-age men alone by themselves. And then we had, of course, the 60-year-old with the child bride, a 14-year-old, and we had the 12-year-old child bride in Wisconsin area. But point is, you cannot tell me that no organization possibly thought for a second, maybe one out of 1,000 could be a trained terrorist. They thought about it. They just didn't care. They opened the gates and they said, welcome to America. To this day, they claim we still don't know where those 60,000+ Afghans are. How can we not know? We do know. And also, considering since January 6th until today, they were pretty fast, quick, and accurate on locating tens of thousands of Americans, either knocking down their doors or storming their house or swatting them or arresting them or putting them in gulag or not giving them a trial date. If we have the capability to do that, we have the capability to do this. Bottom line is they don't care to stop these terrorists from coming in. They just don't. Yeah. As far as who has failed us, I think we have failed us, Brianna. We have put up with this for too long. We have done absolutely nothing that would stop it, to slow it down. Yes, me and you were doing something. When I say we, I mean we, the people, have failed ourselves. We still have a constitution that allows us in so many peaceful and legal ways to stop a lot of this, but most people are too busy going to work, raising children, building families. It just doesn't seem to be the priority. So I blame us for what we're facing today.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that, Annie. It's devastating. I mean, it really is devastating because we're really setting ourselves up for a horrific situation. I wanted to also bring up another situation that happened yesterday too in the House. It was pretty disgusting. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, they voted no. I mean, get this, they voted no on banning Hamas terrorists to enter the United States. I mean, should we ban Hamas attackers from the US? Everyone else, yes, it should be literally, it should be the only thing that everyone in Congress should be able to agree to. And for some reason, these two toxic human beings voted no. At what point, Annie, I mean, we're going to get to the next story too. Let's just go right to the next one with Ilhan Omar, because I think it all kind of weaves in perfectly together. Ilhan Omar, earlier this week we discussed it. Ilhan Omar was caught on camera admitting openly that she doesn't work for the American people. She works for the Somalian people. And most of us kind of suspected that was her priority anyways. But it's interesting because we have now the audio recording of that. And I think it loops in well with this. Let's play the soundbite of her openly saying that she works for the Somalian people. And then I'm going to get your reaction on the other side.
waxay ahayd dawladda Mareykanka waxay ka qabanaysaa wixii anaga aan dhahno dawladda Mareykanka qabo waa kalsoonidaas inaan isku qabno anaga Soomaali hadii aan nahay wadankan anaga ku nool wadankan wadankii aan anaga tax ka dhiibno waaye waa wadankii gabar idinka dhalatayne ee Congress ka fadhiso intii aniga aan Congress joogo wadanka Soomaaliya biyaheeda dad kaleeta iyo badeeda dad kale ma qaadanayaan wadanka Mareykankana kuma taageerayo dad kaleeta in anaga ayna dhacaan marka taas ka seexda reer Minnesota gabadhii Congress u dirsateen way idinka war haysaa sidaad idinka u dareemaysiin dantaas ay u dareemeen madaxweyne Xasan Sheekhna
I mean, Annie, there she is openly admitting she doesn't care. She's openly admitting to working on behalf of the Somalian people. And then today, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, she tried to get her censored. It's so outrageous that we can't get this woman expelled because clearly she is not, and she wants nothing to do with America. She just only wants to push her other country, Somalia, which she says is our country, forward and promote their best interests rather than American interests. Annie, what do you make of this? Because it sounds like treason to me.
Let's go back in time for a minute. And do pardon the laugh. This is not me laughing. This is me trying to filter myself. It's well, I guess nervous for that. Let's go back to the night Rashida Tlaib was selected. And mind you, when I say selected, because she ran by herself and won. So nobody voted for her. She wasn't elected. She was selected. When she was selected, she showed up at the party, wrapped in Palestinian flag to be the United States of America's congresswoman. Right there, she told you what she wants. We weren't paying attention. Again, I was, but next day, not next day, but the first day of working, she walked into her office, grabbed a little note, wrote Palestine, pinned it over the map of Israel. Why would you ever expect her to say yes to banning Hamas? Palestinian flag and from river to the sea map coverage will tell you she is pro-Hamas because that is what Hamas is doing.
Yeah.
Again, if we would, sometimes I feel like it's probably because I grew up with these people or in that area. Maybe that's why I automatically go beyond what they're showing me and I see the real message. But I feel like if every American, and I understand it's hard because in America, there was a time when what you saw was what you saw. There was no reading between the lines, translating, figuring out who meant what. But if Americans would pay attention, as I said, she already told us she's pro-Hamas the moment she was selected. Mm-hmm. She told us she's anti-Semite by covering that map. A year later, she was wearing a T-shirt that had the Israel map on it, black T-shirt, the outline of Israel map in white that had Palestine writing on it. Again, that goes back to the river to the sea, a slogan they had. With Ilhan Omar, from day one, she has called America all sort of names. She has openly said we should defund the police. We should get rid of the Constitution. We should get rid of all of us because we are too American. And recently, as of I believe 2 months ago or less than that, didn't she manage to change the flag of Minnesota to match the Somalian flag? Mm-hmm. Again, none of these surprises me. Is it terrifying? Absolutely, because the agenda is being forwarded by them, and we're kind of behind because we're just catching up with all the messages that were leaving us in last 5 years or so. But the lesson within is we need to, one, start paying more attention, listen to what they say, and take it as they say it. When Rashida says America is Nazi and America is worse than, filled with genocidal people, take her word for it. That's how she looks at U.S. That's how she look at it. Now she dares to openly say it. Now, why can't we get rid of these people? There are a few reasons. Number one, nobody wants to be Islamophobe because that's the newest, ugliest label. Number two, they infiltrated our government way before Rashida, where we have 283 active Sharia-obeying Muslim members inside our government from local, state, and federal. 283 out of the population of Muslims in America being 1.6. That's a pretty high percentage of representation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, and it's honestly alarming. I agree with you. We should have gotten rid of them from the very beginning, though, because ultimately everyone's fearful of that term Islamophobic, and they're just too afraid of that getting tossed around these days, and they're fearful. But they seem to have a higher tolerance for people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. If you guys recall, we spoke about it briefly yesterday as well. George Santos was expelled from Congress over allegations, not even anything that's been proven in a courtroom. And so ultimately it was disturbing to see that. But then we have several. I think we played 3 yesterday. We have 3 audio recordings of Tlaib openly and Omar openly coming out and telling the American people that they do not like our country. And for some reason, we still allow them to continue to operate as Congress members. And it's disturbing. No one wants to come out and say it. That should be something that everyone can unify behind and get rid of them, but they will not do so. And we all know why. I want to jump over to another story too. It's disturbing. It comes from Axios. Axios is exclusively reporting that Secretary of State Tony Blinken asked the State Department to conduct a review and present policy options on possibly the United States kind of recognizing the Palestinian state after the war in Gaza. This was based on 2 U.S. officials that told Axios. That's disturbing in itself that they would even consider this. It seems to be extremely divisive, and we're abandoning our ally, which is obviously Israel. Annie, what do you make of this report? Because it's a report that they're saying that this is what they're hearing. But I mean, it kind of aligns with what's coming out of the administration right now. They seem to be playing it safe whenever they're criticizing the people, Hamas, we'll go with Hamas, people in Gaza at this point.
Well, there are 2 different angles we need to look at. Number one, Biden regime has already recognized the Palestinian state. They already have, because we have the Palestinian Authority that we give money to, so they can turn that into pay per slay. I'm going to explain that just in case if any of your audience aren't familiar with. Palestinian Authority is this program called pay per slay. Literally, pay per slay. That's what it is. Any Palestinian who manages to kill a Jew or Jews, if they end up dying while doing this, blowing themselves up, their family will receive a monthly income for the rest of their life. If they get captured and put in prison, again, their family and themselves will receive a monthly payment for the rest of their life. If they survive it somehow and not end up in prison, they will receive the monthly payment plus a one-time big reward. It's called pay per slay. So to be clear, they pay their citizens to go kill people in Israel. Part of that pay per slay money comes from United States of America. Now, President Trump went to a boss and said, here's the thing, you're going to cancel your pay per slay or we're done funding you. A boss said no, and we stopped funding Palestinian Authority. The first week of Biden in the office, and he resumed the funding of pay per slay. My point is, we may not technically recognize the Palestinian state, but let's be honest, we have. We fund them, we help them, we send them food and humanitarian aid. We talk about them, and when our president goes to Israel, we remove the Israeli flag from his car and drive to Gaza border and say, "Hi, Palestinian state." So technically, we've done it. This is right now. This is what I would call a charade. Regardless of it being going forward or not, we need to be aware that United States of America's Democrat socialist administrations have acknowledged the Palestinian state for many years now. But the trick is the Democrat socialist administration. Yes, we have had one other Republican administration that did that. But other than that, as long as we have Democrats in the White House, in any corner of the White House, the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian state will continue doing what they're doing, which is what papers say. And by the way, since I brought up the papers say, after Obama sent the $151 billion to Islamic Republic of Iran after the first deal, the Supreme Leader of Iran came out on a Friday morning prayer and said, as we have received the money, we are sending $5,000 American dollars to every family member who has lost a father, a husband, or a son, and cover the paper slave of the year. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where your tax dollar went during Obama administration, to fund the killing of Jewish people in Israel.
It's infuriating. It really is infuriating. We've spoken about it before. The Obama years were horrible. Biden's just continuing on what was going on then, but it's heartbreaking when you hear it. And I remember from October 7th, the attack in Israel. I remember seeing all of this. They weren't even Hamas fighters. There was actual residents in Gaza who joined them when they were going into Israel. And we've heard several reports regarding that. And so it's all concerning. Also, I mean, it's also probably likely why countries like Egypt won't take any of these Gaza refugees, as they call them, in. There's something to be said about that. Annie, thank you for
Can I take 1 minute to expand on what you just said?
Yeah.
No country, no Islamic country is taking Palestinian refugees, and I'll tell you why. It's not because they're troublemakers. It's not because they're barbaric. No, because Palestinians don't exist. The word Palestinians you use today, Rihanna, they call themselves Palestinians. Palestinians, the enemies of the Jew of the time of Babylon. They made themselves genetically, if you test them, they are Arabs, they're not Palestinians. They were put in place as Palestinian refugees to create the chaos we'll look at today. They don't need homes. There is no home to go to, and other Islamic countries aren't taking them in because this chaos needs to continue. And they need to spread them into Western countries to turn the Western countries into the chaos of what Israel is facing.
Wow. Annie, that's actually that's a great explanation for it too. I like it because I just thought it was because they teach their children to hate Jews and to kill Jews, but that seems to make actually more sense because we were in talks of taking them in.
Every Islamic country teaches their kids. Where I grew up, at a school every morning, and by the way, in Iran, you go to school 6 days a week, not 5, because they only have one weekend, and that's Fridays. 6 days a week, every morning, we would line up in the backyard of the school. The dean would chant it, and we would have to chant after her, "Death to America, death to Israel," the whole time. Every Islamic country teaches their kids to hate America, and remember, America is the great Satan, Israel is the small Satan in every Islamic school, every Islamic country, every Islamic society.
It's really scary, Annie. Annie Cyrus, thank you for jumping in with us today. If you guys want to follow her work, head over to liveuptofreedom.com. She's a great independent journalist, so go over there and support her work. You've got so many great videos. It's very insightful, so we appreciate you jumping on with us today. And we're looking forward to having you back on because there's so much to dissect with all of these Middle Eastern conflicts that are going on right now. So thank you, Annie.